Hi, I'm Luke Poon with the King County Auditor's Office.
And I'm Sidhu, also with the King County Auditor's Office.
And we're here to talk to you about the implementation of King County's equity strategies. First, I'd like to remind you of some of the key takeaways that reflect council investment in equity and social justice in King County. And each of the things that I'm going to tell you about is actually a really big deal. Actions that have driven the county forward toward its ambitious goal of transformation into a pro-equity, anti-racist government. So shortly after then Executive Ron Sims launched the ESJ initiative in 2008, Council passed the Fair and Just Ordinance, which emphasized that equity work is everyone's work. All staff must center equity and social justice in their decisions and actions. Council established the Office of Equity, Racial, and Social Justice, or OERSJ, in 2015. At its beginning, the office had 2.5 FTEs. And one of its main roles was to create the county's first ESJ strategic plan, which received national acclaim. That happened in 2016. Now, 2020 was a pivotal year. The executive responded to the disparate impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic and the national movement for racial justice by declaring racism as a public health crisis and appointing the county's first Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer, Anita Whitfield. Council investments in equity staff, both in OERSJ and in departments, strengthened and elevated the county's commitment to centering equity in all its plans, processes, and decisions. And by this point, the Office of Equity, Racial, and Social Justice had over 15 people working in a combination of FTEs and TLTs. In 2021, the executive branch updated its management maturity model to explicitly call out pro-equity and anti-racist expectations for agencies. And in 2022, the Department of Human Resources began developing ESJ-related job expectations to add clarity and accountability at the employee level. Accountability is a key element of equity change, and you'll hear more about that later. So this timeline depicts only some of the notable achievements that we describe in our report. Now, let me tell you about our key findings. First, we found that a lack of clear roles between OERSJ and county agencies slowed the county's progress toward achieving its equity goals. Second, limited accountability made it difficult to know whether countywide strategies are working. And third, OERSJ's governance structures, which are foundational management components such as goals, objectives, and performance measures, are still in development, both at the office and at the program level. So you'll see the icons associated with each of these key findings repeated in the lower right corner of the upcoming slides, just to help us keep track of which one we're talking about. Okay, so clear roles are crucial to succeed in a huge and complex undertaking like becoming a pro-equity and anti-racist government. One of the primary challenges that slowed the county's progress was the lack of clear boundaries between OERSJ responsibilities and agency responsibilities. Specifically, the county has made it clear that equity work is everyone's work, but OERSJ staff are the subject matter experts. One of their main jobs is to support agencies in developing and implementing ways to center equity in their work. So if you're an agency and you want to make sure your community engagement process is effective, you call the equity people. If you're working on a big county-wide initiative like planning the downtown campus and you want to make sure that you are centering equity, you call the equity people. And this might sound flippant, but this is the crux of the problem. OERSJ is overwhelmed with requests for assistance because roles aren't clear. And reliance on OERSJ to fill the gap has in some cases slowed agency progress at deepening their own expertise. The fact that requests for assistance have more than tripled is in some ways a good thing because it indicates that agencies really want to do a good job at embedding equity in their work. OERSJ staff said that supporting agency efforts is a core part of their work. The problem is that the quantity of important requests is more than they can handle. But they don't want to say no to anything because saying no has consequences. Saying no means the county could fail to reach people who need assistance. Saying no means that people could be harmed. So when should they say no? Well, the lack of clearly defined roles has made it difficult for OERSJ to prioritize other key bodies of work, such as strategic planning, both countywide and for its own office. So we found two ways to clarify roles between OERSJ and agencies, and one is King County Code. County leaders had not agreed upon and documented in code a vision for OERSJ's role until just recently. Council approved a high-level description of its role in November 2022. This action laid a foundation for OERSJ to build upon to further define the goals and boundaries of its work. And the other opportunity to clarify roles and responsibilities, especially vis-a-vis county agencies, is the ESJ strategic plan. The 2016 plan included many goals and strategies, but didn't clearly articulate roles and responsibilities for implementing them. So some agencies had a hard time figuring out what they were supposed to do to implement the plan. Staff working on the 2023 strategic plan update indicated that they expect to include clear roles and responsibilities for the various county agencies involved in the updated version. And we make a recommendation to that effect in our report. Okay, over to Anu for the next part. Thank you.
Thank you, Luke. So as Luke just walked us through, the county has been doing equity work for over a decade. So you might wonder, well, did the strategies outlined in the ESJ strategic plan work? Did they improve equity in the community? Well, our audit found that the county can't tell because it hasn't tracked the data it needs. While the ESJ strategic plan breaks down equity work into tangible strategies that include goals and performance measures, which are meant to track progress, that tracking didn't really happen. We found that King County did not have a way to completely and consistently monitor its ESJ strategic plan goals or objectives. Now, this means that the county doesn't know whether its strategies are improving equity as intended, or even know whether all of its strategies are being implemented. This is a problem because improving community conditions across King County is a large effort that takes time, which is why it's even more important to track what work is happening and how well it's working. Otherwise, the county risks losing momentum in this work or investing in the wrong strategies. So why aren't these goals being tracked? One reason, similar to the lack of clear roles Luke just walked us through, is because it isn't entirely clear who is in charge. For example, while the ESJ strategic plan stated that there would be and report progress, it didn't say who would develop the system and communicate the results. OERSJ tried to track goals, but they said that they didn't have clear authority to compel agencies to provide them data and information they needed. To ensure that the county's equity goals are fully and consistently tracked, we recommend that the executive identify a process owner responsible for tracking and that entity track those goals. So performance measures track the county's strategies as outlined in the ESJ strategic plan. But ultimately, those efforts are trying to improve equity in the larger King County community. Community indicators are data points that demonstrate the long-term impacts of the county's equity strategies and include things like reducing homelessness and improving transportation access. In 2015, the Office of Performance Strategy and Budget, or PSB, provided data on 67 community indicators for the county. These indicators have two goals. One is to use this data to help the county understand where it should be investing and prioritizing its equity work. And two is to use them to understand whether the county's equity strategies are improving community conditions over time. But this data has not been revisited until recently when a council ordinance directed PSB to update the indicators in 2023, but there's no future plans for updates. Now, that's a problem because ultimately, what is equity work trying to do? It's trying to improve people's lives. And if indicators aren't being measured, then the county doesn't know if it is effectively working towards that goal. This could also mean that the county is investing in the wrong or less effective strategies. Lastly, this can also hurt relationships with the community. People won't experience the impacts of equity work right away. These things take time. And without reporting on data to show progress, there's even more reason for community to potentially be skeptical that the county is doing the work it says it's doing. So why hasn't there been consistent tracking? Well, one of the issues we identified is that there is no regular plan on when and how often to track indicator data. Without a clear plan, it's hard to know when updates to indicators need to happen. Since one of the purposes of community indicators is to inform the county's equity strategies, we recommend that PSB align reporting with updates to King County's ESJ strategic plan to help ensure that the county is assessing its priorities and strategies in line with changing community conditions. PSB should also publicly report on these indicators in line with best practice so the community is aware of how strategies are impacting them. Last, we will talk about the Office of Equity, Racial, and Social Justices, or OERSJ's programs. As Luke mentioned earlier, the office was created in 2015 to help the county implement its equity strategies. It currently has 6 staffed programs listed on this slide. Some of these programs have been around longer, such as ESJ Policy Advisement, which provides support to the county's equity strategies. Others are newer, like community engagement and co-creation, which supports the county in its community engagement strategies. We surveyed employees leading each of these programs and found that most governance structures are not in place, but many are in development. And by governance structures, I mean whether programs have goals, objectives, strategies, data measures, and policies and procedures as listed at the top of this slide. These things help organizations plan or govern their work. Now, don't worry about reading everything on this slide. You'll see a mix of yellows, oranges, some green, and a red. These all indicate whether or not a program has, is developing, or does not have the associated governance structure. The mix of colors shows us that each of the programs have varying levels of governance in place, and because no one program has all greens, none that are fully developed. Let's take a quick example and look at one of the office's longest standing programs, ESJ Policy Advisement. Here you can see that this program has goals reflected by the green box. Most other things are in yellow, meaning that program staff are developing these things but are not finished. The last box is red, meaning that at the time of our audit, program staff did not have a near-term plan to develop policies and procedures. So why is this important? Well, OERSJ has critical work to help improve equity, racial, and social justice outcomes in the county. And so the lack of governance creates risk that this work doesn't get done. For programs such as civil rights, this can have big impacts that harm staff and create legal liability. Several former OERSJ staff said that the lack of prioritization stemming from the lack of governance was a reason they left their job due to burnout. One of the reasons to have good governance is so organizations can match their capacity to their workload, helping them better prioritize their work. OERJ and is already proactively working to develop governance for each of its programs, which is great. And so to help ensure the momentum of that critical work gets done, and so OERSJ's important work is effectively prioritized, we recommend that the office develop each of the governance elements we shared in the last slide for all of its programs. Now, to summarize our key takeaways. First, we found that a lack of clear roles slowed the county's progress toward achieving its equity goals. Second, we found the lack of accountability made it difficult to know whether strategies are working. Third, OERSJ's governance structures, which are foundational elements of effective management, including things like goals, objectives, and performance measures, are still in development, making it difficult for the office to prioritize and complete its work. In the short presentation, we were only able to share some of our key, a lot more in the report. We encourage you to read the entire report for more detail on each of these findings. We'd like to thank the Office of Equity, Racial, and Social Justice, the Office of Performance, Strategy, and Budget, and the Department of Human Resources for their partnership throughout this audit. Thank you.